It's another Church Solutions podcast, and this is episode number 375. My name is Phil Thompson.
And I'm Steve Lacy.
I'm Michael Gray.
Michael's with us today, as well as Steve, back from his trip to the Magical Kingdom. And
Happiest place on earth.
I was just telling the guys I got a haircut, and I've had it for like 2 or 3 weeks, and nobody has said nothing about it.
I said, which hair did you have cut?
Yeah. So I had a lot cut off. But anyhow, thanks for being with us today, folks. We are going to do this podcast on PTZ cameras because we are actually having a PTZ webinar. And again, Michael and I were stumbling last week over the title, and I can't remember it now. It's something like "Why PTZs Are Taking Over the World" or something like that.
Yeah.
And
something like that.
Yeah, but
why PTZs are taking over streaming for ministry streaming, something like that.
Yeah. We try to get these titles for our webinars as long as possible. We try to make them as long as possible. So, look, we are doing a webinar March 14th, and it is on PTZ cameras, and it's not a sales webinar. We don't sell PTZ cameras. We are, though, having a guest, Stephen Haywood. He's from PTZ Optics, and though he does sell PTZ cameras, he's not actually the salesperson. He's really more of a tech guy there. And so it's not a sales deal, but I will promise you this, if you go to the webinar, you'll learn a lot about PTZ cameras, and we're not going to pressure you.
Yeah, you'll see some of the cool things that they can do to and I don't want to give away what we're going to talk about today, but you're going to see some really cool things. And it's not just the cool factor, it's how immersive it can make your service experience.
Yeah.
And we're talking about volunteers and pastors and their experiences with PTZ. So this should be from all aspects.
Absolutely. So first of all, let's remind people you can sign up for the webinar.streamingchurch.tv. That's webinar.streamingchurch.tv. You can sign up there. And here's the cool thing about this is we are giving away, in conjunction with PTZ Optics, we're giving away a PTZ camera, and it's a nice one. Michael, how can people win this PTZ camera?
It's actually easy. First of all, go to the webinar.streamingchurch.tv and register. And then there's instructions there, but the instructions are take the link to the webinar, share it to one of your social media channels, tag us at streamingchurch.tv, and tell us what you would do if you won that camera. Yeah. What would you do with it?
Yeah, what would you do with it? How would you use it?
And the camera, he mentioned, just a little bit more on it. He was trying to see if he can get one of the new ones or one of the old ones, and it looks like he's got one of the new ones in top of the line. So it's a
brand new
$2,200 camera.
So, and it's 4K, and it has auto follow. So a moderately twitchy guy on stage like me, it's just going to follow me back and forth, and nobody has to be running a joystick or anything.
I thought he also said it's got face recognition. So if you got the worship leader standing next to the pastor, it knows what face to follow. So
that's
smart about that.
For some people who run a camera, this would be the greatest blessing on the planet because some pastors are pretty hard to follow on stage. And so if you've got facial tracking and it tracks with you as you go, wow, what a treat.
Yeah, we've had a lot of pastors through our church over the years, but I think the award may go to one named Adam as being the quickest.
He might be the twitchiest. Yeah, he's pretty fast.
He was hard to keep up with.
Some days I was a close second.
That's true.
The camera guys would go, dude, slow down, please.
Jeff has gotten so predictable, the main senior pastor, because when he gives a little body movement and lets you know which way he's going to go, and then but he doesn't dart. So he's been pretty easy.
Okay.
Anyway. To be honest, at times I took it as a challenge, and I would fake out the cameraman to be fun, fake
right, go left.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, we have pacers and people that stand still. I think I've been a combination of both over the years. So let's talk about PTZ cameras a little bit here. Several years ago, I put together a recommendations equipment list, which you can still find on streamingchurch.tv. We actually update it all the time, but I remember interviewing somebody a few years ago on PTZ cameras. I think it was Paul Richardson or something, and PTZ cameras have really improved a lot from when they first came out. And so we do recommend, we've been recommending PTZ cameras, and they're just getting better and better, as the guys were just talking about here earlier. So, and more churches are starting to use those. So first of all, we probably need to start off with, what in the world is a PTZ camera? So somebody tell me, what's PTZ mean?
It's Peter, Tom, and Zachary.
Zeus.
Is what it stands Zeus. So PTZ pan, tilt. So pan is left and right. Tilt is up and down, and zoom is zoom in and zoom out. So PTZ, it's a type of camera that is remote controlled, typically with a joystick or computer or something like that, that allows you to man the camera without touching the camera.
Yeah.
Or being in the room even.
Yeah.
And they don't look, most of the time they don't look, I mean, there's different models, but most of them don't look like your typical camera, right? I mean, some of them are kind of round with a dome.
Yes.
They're not all like that.
And they're small. They're small. They're very unobtrusive. So you had this mounted on a wall in your worship center.
Yeah.
It kind of almost goes unnoticed. It's not something that draws a lot of attention like a big tripod and a big giant production camera. Takes up a lot of room, plus the fact that you add the space of another person running the camera in that space, which then takes up a lot of space.
Yeah, we worked with a church here that I thought had a pretty unique way of doing it too. They put their PTZ in front of the front row of the congregation.
Oh.
So
wow.
it was hidden. You couldn't even see it, but it was able to get a really good shot of everything that's going on up on the worship stage. So
and the closer you get, I know we've talked about this a million times before, but the closer you get, the less expensive lights you have to have and the quality of that image. So closer is always better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so we've established what a PTZ camera is, and let's talk a little bit about what they can do. The bottom line is they can do pretty much anything and more than what you've already got. And I guess the first thing we should mention is that you can use remote control on these things. And it used to be in the good old days when they first came out and churches were starting to use them, when they tried to use the remote control, they overshot whatever they were trying to do, right? Is that the right term? So you wanted to zoom in on somebody and you'd get their nose hairs if you were lucky, or you got a shot of their chest or something, or the top of their head.
And that's actually exaggerated the further you get from the subject as well. So it's one of the benefits of having a nice small one, is because if you're at the back and you barely, tweak it, and you're, 100 feet away from the subject. Yeah. That's a big move for somebody that's 100 feet away. So, overshooting was definitely a challenge.
And then as Mike was saying, you go left or right. It would be kind of hard. So now a lot of these PTZ cameras, the newer ones, they're much smoother. Mm-hmm. And you can make the adjustments without looking like a clown. The other thing is too, and Steve, you mentioned this earlier before the podcast here. You can program different shots, so you can program your PTZ camera with just a push of the button. Once you've programmed it, you push the button and you can go right to wherever it is you wanted to go without having to manually zoom it in or something.
Oh, sorry, Steve.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, so pastor's sitting at a table or something, typically that's where pastor goes when he's talking about scripture, or he's really talking about something poignant, he really wants to make a point, you can program that shot. And the one we're giving away has 20 times zoom. So you could have just like this, just his face, and be really zoomed in tight and have that pre-programmed click, and it goes right to that point where he's going to make a very important point in his sermon.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, I mean, we're not the experts, but we're going to have the expert next week. But as I was telling before we went on, I've been hanging around PTZ cameras. I'm hanging out in the garage, so I'm now a mechanic. So, and I've driven them a little bit. And we matured, or I think not all the cameras are going to have all the features. So we started at our church with just ones you could control. There was no computer control. It just had a separate joystick that would send it, left, right, up, and zoom. And that was pretty much it. And then recently we've upgraded to the one that has software associated with it, runs on the computer, where you go through and say, I want camera 3 to have this close up of the assistant vocalist on, over here. And so actually, very recently, we just upgraded this, and I'm usually the switcher at church driving the video switch. And so these guys have gone to town with this. They have probably over 25 different shots that they have figured out, and they wrote them up on a sheet, and they hand them out to everybody. We're not even in the sanctuary. The ones that are driving the cameras and doing the switching and stuff, we're in a room adjacent. But it's, when I say go to camera 3's shot 14, then, that's what that is. So the switcher knows what's going on. So they've kind of figured them all out, as long as people don't move,
Well, that's where you do the magical trick of putting tape on the floor. Here is your spot. When you get to this and you want to do this, make sure you're on that spot. Yeah. Otherwise, we're going to be showing who knows what.
Exactly.
A video with nobody in it. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Some people feel like that's unattainable, but we went a few years ago to a church in DC, the Theater Church, and the pastor Mark, the pastor Mark, on his delivery for his experience, had a box on the floor that was 4 foot by 4 foot, and it was a unmanned single camera, like one of these that we're talking about, and that was his realm, and he did great. And he just learned that 4 foot by 4 foot was all he could move. And I watched the sermons multiple times. Honestly, I didn't even notice that he wasn't moving around that much.
So he had boundaries.
Pastor Mark had a mark, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Or a cage, another.
Okay.
That'd be Mark Batterson had a mark guy telling him where he could where the mark boundary. Here's the tape, and it was actually like bright pink or yellow, to where you could actually see it in your peripheral as you're moving around.
Okay.
All right.
All right. What else about PTZ cameras can we inform our wonderful?
Well, we're going to get educated along with our audience somewhat. I mean, with Steven's going to bring us in, but
for the webinar,
I think, with the webinar coming next week, again, you can win yourself a $2,200 camera for your church. So very easily. And we got very few shares so far. So
I know. So it's going to be an easy win.
Yeah,
it's going to be an easy win for somebody. So
yeah. So get out there and do it. I guess the deal is, and I'm not sure how the price curve has changed over the years, but we've had, our good, better, best list that you were talking about, Phil, earlier, and we'd had PTZs on there, actually a set of PTZs for a long time. And I'm assuming that initially they were very expensive. And I think the prices have come down, even though we're giving away a a top-notch one here, but
yeah, they have gone down. They've gone down quite a bit. So, and that's good news, for you got your church budget. I think that they really add a lot. As Mike said, the size, they're very small. And you can certainly, program them if you want. And the nice thing about these things is, like at the church I was with, or Mike, I guess you still go. Did they kick you out, Mike? I don't remember, but Mike was on staff there. Steve is still there, but we had 3 cameras, and so I think one was stationary, but we had the other 2 we had to manually operate, if I remember right. So, one of the pros about this PTZ thing is that you don't have to have, if you've got 3 PTZ cameras, you don't have to have 3 people running them.
Yeah.
Right.
You just one person, right?
Yeah.
It can be the switcher. And if you have it set up well, then the switcher can control the camera and the switching themselves. Yeah. So one volunteer replaced what at one point we had 4 volunteers doing.
Yeah, exactly. So it definitely reduces the load.
Yeah.
And I've actually been, I've been that guy that's on the switcher and driving the remote cameras as well. I guess we're getting a little more advanced now. So we've got a remote camera operator they've just brought in, because before we would set up some shots, and we call them safety shots. So that we'd have a one manned camera that was following, the pastor speaking. And then this is during, when the pastor's speaking, the worship band's gone, we typically would set the PTZs up in case he walks way stage left, or he didn't have his mark in his little boundary there, so that, or if he was turning and walking, so that the main camera, which was kind of at the back of the house, would only have a shot of his side as he turned, but the ones on the other wall would pick him up. So we would set up these kind of wide safety shots when the manned camera didn't work out very well. So that's another thing to talk about, is you don't want to, you can do a blend, you can set some fixed cameras, you can get some PTZ cameras, and we've done that as well. Some of the early things that we did, this is probably definitely more than 10 years ago. We were setting cameras over drum sets, doing what the big boys were doing, but we would do it as best as we could. So anyway, we set up a bunch of.
Yeah, you set up a lot of specific shots, and I don't know what it is in the business, but
specific cameras. We'd have like a camera over the drummer pointing down at the drums. It was a fixed. It didn't go anywhere. Yeah. And the most innovative we stole from a church in Phoenix. I don't know if you remember, Phil.
The guitar.
The guitar cam, where they mounted a camera on the neck of the guitar. I thought that was the coolest thing. So I have a son who plays guitar.
We thought it was really good. Unfortunately, I won't say her name, but Sharon didn't like the idea. Oh wait, I just did say her name.
I'll be honest with you. I didn't like it either, because it was a little bit out of left field. And so a lot of that's what you have to discover is, I think a PTZ gives you so many more options of unique things you can think of and do versus a manual manned camera. The key being you're developing your strategies around your cameras to make a more immersive experience that is very fitting. Somebody's Allegra is going to town, Steve.
I know, and I thought it's sitting right here on my desk. And
at least my dogs are quiet. I probably jinxed myself at this point.
I'm trying to turn it down, and I turned it way up.
As to price, when I was leading that team, we were in the realm when we were buying the quality of image. We were buying, $4,000 and $5,000, production type cameras. Whereas now I can get that quality. Now, granted, this one, the one we're giving away is more expensive than some that you can get that are really high quality. Very high quality. in a PTZ camera, and very small footprint and easy to place.
Yeah. So, Steve, let's be fair. Let's address something that you guys ran across a couple of weeks ago, and it wasn't. I mean, we want to. What you guys are using at your church, Steve, is not. You're not using the PTZs that we're talking about here, but you're using a tool that helps those cameras kind of do stuff. What's it called?
There's I mean, they refer to it as a gimbal. So we have a normal, very expensive video camera that it isn't a PTZ camera that mounts to a PTZ platform. They call it a gimbal.
Okay.
And then it's got some things that'll go up and connect to it to either electronically, or I haven't looked that closely, or mechanically adjust, turns zooms or focus or things like that.
All right.
So it's a kind of a separate device. It's not an all-in-one that we're.
Yeah. So it's a separate piece of hardware that hooks up to a very expensive camera that Mike wasted the church's money on, and when he was there doing it, and so, but you guys had a little problem, and I wonder if this would even be the same. We have to ask Stephen this for our webinar next week, but you guys had a little problem because there was a firmware update.
Yeah, well,
and that screwed everything up.
I was there, and it was probably the worst service as far as things that can happen. Typically what happens is we do a run through and all the terrible things happen in the run through, and then we're scared to death during the live service and it goes off without a hitch. Well, this time it was both. The run through, a couple of the cameras were getting out of whack, and the main tech there, Tony, would run over and he'd go what he did exactly, but he's back in the sanctuary and he's adjusting things, and we're on headsets going, how's that look now? Okay, yeah, that looks great now. Okay, you fixed it. Yeah, everything's good. And then the service rolled around and it went back to where it was. And later we found out that I guess the platform's got a firmware update or something that, or was lacking a firmware update. I'm not sure which one it was. I think it did get a firmware update right that day, and it wreaked havoc. So,
those are things that you have to watch out for. We'll have to ask Stephen Haywood about this next week about updates and stuff, but because I'm sure they have updates, right? I mean, you would think they would.
Yeah, one would think.
So, all right. So, go ahead, Stephen. I'm sorry.
I was just kind of like getting those Windows updates right before you start your encoder.
Yeah,
it can be a stressor.
Is that in the rules of streaming?
Our top
the 10 commandments of streaming. That would be one of my top ones.
Yeah,
never ever allow a computer to update itself, and never do it on right before the weekend.
Yeah.
Or even better is just probably on Monday, go around and do all the updates. Update all the computers and everything that could possibly get an update. Yeah. Do it on Monday, so you have a week to recover.
You have a week to fix your camera firmware so that the cameras still work.
Yeah.
So we're not dogging the equipment. The firmware updates go just about across every realm of equipment that we use.
Yep.
Whether it be a hardware encoder or software encoder, you're going to have updates, and there are wise times to do those updates, and there are very unwise times. Sunday morning is the most unwise on the planet, because then I get the call. We broke everything. Help me.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that problem is many people have volunteers, and so they shut the thing down Sunday after church, and then they come back Sunday morning and they boot it up, and that's when that's the problem sometimes is people aren't
automatic update.
People aren't there during the week to do it. So all right, so let's wrap this up here. So let's refresh everybody's memories here. Sign up for the webinar. It'll be a lot of fun. You'll enjoy it, because it's not going to be your typical webinar. Normally we run PowerPoint slides and we talk over each other, and if we're lucky, somebody spams us or something and makes it interesting. But with Stephen Haywood, he's going to be a part of this thing. He's going to show a lot of video. So there's going to be a lot of video showing you how these PTZ cameras work, and he'll give you demonstrations. There's some testimonies of why people have gone for them and why they like them, why they don't. But I would suggest that you sign up at webinar.streamingchurch.tv. The idea is that this is going to be about 30 minutes long. We'll take your questions. So we'll probably take questions at the end. So, it'll be very informative. It really will. And we're not going to be selling you anything other than just the fact that, hey, here's some information that you should consider, because it sounds to me like PTZs might be the way to go for your church. Maybe not. I don't know. So, and again, you can win this PTZ camera we were talking about by going to webinar.streamingchurch.tv, signing up. And then, Michael, you were saying people can share the link to the sign up.
Yeah, so that landing page, the instructions are there in case I make it confusing, but you're gonna sign up, and then you're going to share the link to the landing page. Okay. And in that post on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever it might be, you're gonna say, here's what I would do if I won this camera, and say what that is.
Yeah. And you tag
us at streamingchurch.tv.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get rid of Jerry that mans my camera and messes it up every week.
There you go. You can dump Jerry. All right. So definitely hit us up on that. If you have any questions about that, fine. We have a blog. We had some more information about PTZ cameras. If you go to blog.streamingchurch.tv, so you can see that. There's also if you just do a search for PTZ cameras at our blog, you'll see that there's a link for a YouTube interview that we did with a fellow on PTZs a couple years ago, probably about 2 or 3 years ago. So that's informative. What we really want to do here at streamingchurch.tv is we want to help you guys succeed. So we want to provide you guys as many resources as we can. That's why we have the blog. That's why we have Church Solutions podcast. That's why we do what we do here. And so we want your church to be the best it can be, to fulfill God's purposes that you feel like God's leading you to do. And so we're here to help you. That's what it's all about. So, be a part of the webinar. We're going to do webinars every month. We've been doing that. We've already done some in the past. And if you want to see what we've done in the past, you can just reverse the domain. You can go to streamingchurch.tv/webinar. And you'll see some of the webinars we've done in the past. And again, we're here to help you. Anything we can do. All right, guys. Okay. Anything else, guys, before we shut everything down here?
Not that I can think of.
All right. Thank you, Jackson, Stephen, Lacy, for your time today. Sure appreciate that.
Glad to be here.
And Michael, I don't know your middle name, so I won't say it, but thank you.
Good enough.
And I'm Phil Thompson. And most of all, folks, thank you for spending some time with us today on the Church Solutions podcast. My name is Phil Thompson. Please take care of yourselves and each other. And we'll catch you again next time on another episode of the Church Solutions podcast.